Đừng được chọc trời. Okay.
No gill nets.
Yutika.
You know, I really wanted to find a gill net, but it's really good that we're not finding gill nets. With the river guards around, fewer dolphins are dying. They're out patrolling come rain, hail or shine, and it's clearly really personal. So what's it like when you see a baby? What about the fishermen? How do they react to you wanting to take their nets?
คือធម្មតាគាត់ខឹងសម្រាប់ខឹងគាត់ដែរយកធី
React to you wanting to take their nets.
คือធម្មតាគាត់ខឹងសម្រាប់ខឹងគាត់ដែរយកធីដឹងខ្លួនគាត់ខុសតំបន់អភិរក្សសត្វសោតតើគេហាមប្រភេទអីខ្លះដែលក្នុងតំបន់ហ្នឹងគេមិនអនុញ្ញាតឲ្យគាត់យល់ដឹងកាលណាតែគាត់យល់ដឹងហើយការពីរបស់យើងគឺបានជោគជ័យ
While gill nets are banned in the dolphin conservation area, families still need to eat. So how are local fishers adapting to these changes?
ជាជននេះសឹង60%ប្រហែលជា90%ដែលគេបោះបង់មងចោលហើយ
So Hang lives on the river with his family and has ditched gill nets for a traditional style fish trap.
លបនេះបើចេះតាំងពីអាយុប្រហែលជា12 13ឆ្នាំដែលគាត់ឲ្យយើងជួយគាត់បានជួយម្ដងម្កាលអញ្ចឹងដល់ពេលជួយយូរចេះរហូតដល់គាត់បដោយបានហ្នឹងយើងអាយុ
Something he's started showing his own kids and is attempting to teach me. Under there.
Okay. ហើយរឹតវាឡើង
Yeah. To keep that tight and then slip knot.
Okay.
There.
គាត់បដោយឲ្យធ្វើបាន
Is it possible to catch lots of fish with these traps?
អត់ទៅជាបានច្រើនទេតែបានពេលខ្លះទៅបាន1 2អីចឹងគាត់ហូបដែរ
So of all the things to catch in your river, what's your favourite to eat?
ជីវៈច្រើនណាជីវៈចម្រុះត្រីច្រើនណាដែលរស់នៅក្នុងទន្លេនឹងច្រើនមុខមែនតែនតែបើត្រីឆ្ងាញ់ជាងគេមានអីឆ្ងាញ់ជាងត្រីប៉ាស្អីទេព្រោះ
By changing the way they feed their families, So Hang and his community are finding ways to live alongside the dolphins. Cambodians are the largest consumers of freshwater fish per capita in the world. But it's by no means their only source of protein. One of the many fast food joints you see when you're on the streets of Cambodia serves a snack packed full of energy. He's very busy. He's busier than everybody else, so his must be the best.
The recipe, here's the recipe.
Secret recipe.
Yeah.
I can see crickets, they're easily identifiable. There's like little shrimp as well. There looks like some sort of caterpillars. Beetles. There's this huge wok of boiling oil and it actually smells quite good. Hello. Crickets?
One will last one.
I've got a tin's worth of crickets and a tin's worth of lava things.
Thank you.
Thank you. I can see legs. Ooh. Oh, I just felt their feet. Why is it that we find this so hard as Westerners, right? We eat all sorts of protein and this is really no different. Okay, are we ready? Crunchy, surprisingly sweet. Oh, what are they? Lava of some description. I don't know what they are. Okay. Okay, that one's way more juicy. Whatever that is has guts. To find out more, I'm headed straight to the source. An insect farm run by Vong and Roz, who can show me around. Oh wow, I can hear them.
Yeah. See this one, and then already they eat pumpkin.
Pumpkin.
Yeah, they eat salad. And over there, you see the fruit of palm.
Ah.
You see?
Yeah, palm fruit.
Yeah, palm fruit. The cricket like a lot of.
So, where did the idea come from for you to start insect farming?
It's my idea because after COVID, we decided with my wife, given the idea of my mom. She told me when I was 1 year old, during Khmer Rouge, we don't have anything to eat. The first food that my mom took it to feed me, that the cricket. So that's why I like so much. When my daughter and my small boy a little bit.
When Vong was a baby, Cambodia was ruled by the Khmer Rouge, a brutal regime that caused the deaths of around 1.7 million people, a quarter of the population, through forced labour, executions and famine.
The generation, my mom's generation, really, they didn't have anything to eat. They need to eat.
Yeah, they need to eat something.
Yeah, something.
Vong's business is banking on Cambodians eating insects by choice, not out of necessity.
But right now, hamburger,
Yeah.
fish, from a lot of. How can we push our new generation to eat?
Yeah.
Then our staff here, they have a good experience.
It's fascinating to see how crickets can be farmed. They don't need many resources, and they go from egg to market in less than 40 days. Do your family try and get free crickets?
All my family,
Yeah.
yeah, the same the family of my wife.
Yeah, everyone wants crickets
everyone.
now.
And the dog, they eat the cricket.
The dog
too.
eats the cricket?
Yeah, they like so much.
Tasty treats. It may take time for me to develop a taste for insects, but I can see what a valuable and sustainable source of protein these could become. Today I'm up before sunrise to hopefully catch a glimpse of a species that was predicted to be extinct by 2023. These birds are most often seen way off in the distance and covered by grass. So I'm hopeful, but I'm also realistic. I'm looking for the Bengal florican, a large bird living on the floodplains 80 kilometres south of the city of Siem Reap. There are fewer than 800 left in the wild. It's really rare to have this sort of habitat anymore, almost anywhere in the world. Grasslands are one of the easiest places to turn to agriculture, to build houses on and things like that, because they're open and flat already. And that makes this place really precious. It's safeguarded by a collaborative team of community, Wildlife Conservation Society and government members. What does the protected area actually mean? What are people allowed to do here?
We allow the people to use the resource very sustainable use, timber or something like that. We have a lot.
Sianan is a local who has helped get his community on side with land restrictions. Can you say that I absolutely love his shirt? It's a really good shirt.
Yeah.
I need to buy one of them. Is everyone in the community happy with the protection?
តែមានពាក្យតិចដែរដែលប្រជាជនគេចង់
មិនសប្បាយចិត្ត
គេសប្បាយចិត្តដោយសារយើងការពារដីនេះតែភាគច្រើនគេសប្បាយចិត្ត
The team have successfully found a way to share resources with the community that also works for the birds, making this area home to the largest population of the florican worldwide.
This morning we saw one male over there, but right now the male is hiding on the grass.
The males are easier to spot than the females, are they?
Yep, because they have black and white.
Okay, there's one male over there. Black spot over there. Near the bush.
Front bush, back
no,
bush?
No, the same distance with the bush, but at the right hand side.
I
There's
can
around
see
10 meter
it!
from the right hand side.
The right hand side.
I can see it!
They just walk straight then.
I can see it! What size would he be?
So the size like the duck, 2 kg or something. Or
Oh, he's quite
2.5.
heavy. Ooh.
Yep.
It's the breeding season, and then the male they like to jump up and down to attract the female.
Oh, the bird is playing.
Oh, he just floated up and down.
Oh, nice.
Look at that! Whee! What a view! One of the most endangered creatures in the world. Seeing that one lone bird out there trying to find a mate and not having any success today made me realise that the florican probably needs a little bit of a helping hand. Oh my goodness. She's beautiful.
This is one of the birds that came to us as an egg. We've incubated it here and hand-reared the animal.
The other half of the project goes on here, at the Angkor Centre for Conservation of Biodiversity, in a world first where Christelle and the team are raising a florican assurance colony in captivity. Why establish an assurance colony? Break it down for me.
So to safeguard the animals from possibly going extinct, we want to establish an assurance colony with the idea that we're breeding here, building that population, and once their habitat is safe, release those animals back to the wild.
How many chicks have you brought up now?
This one, the third one.
The third one, the third baby. They like the insects. They said that if the trend continued as it was, the florican would be extinct by 2023. And here we are in 2023. I've seen an individual in the wild. We've seen individuals in captivity that are hopefully going to mean there's a strong future for the Bengal florican. My journey is ending at the ancient temples near Siem Reap. Here, the centuries-old buildings are being preserved while the forest grows freely around them, finding a balance between humans and nature. I think what I've come away with from visiting all these different people and projects in Cambodia is a sense of hope. That despite the odds, there are people working for nature to make sure that we don't lose what Cambodia is, which is a beautiful wild place.
cày bao nhiêu, Sprite cũng chiều. Ăn cày có Sprite, càng cày càng đã.
Let me tell you a story about a man. My man, Billy. And how he was lost for a while until beauty found him. Let me tell you a story about a man. My man, Billy. And how he was lost for a while until beauty found him.
How are you doing?
We moved here for a better life. Billy brought me to Shetland, Britain's last outpost before the Arctic. He was born here, but felt he'd been away too long. It was in his blood. I asked him what that actually meant, and he said he didn't really know. We moved to an old house by the sea and started fixing it up. But before we knew it, routine, life, caught up with us again.
Cleric Thistle? No. Nurse United? No. Westside Rebels? No.
Sometimes, when you get everything you want, you convince yourself that it's everything you need. You convince yourself you're happy. And I think we were both guilty of that. But then, who isn't? Billy had a wee hole in his heart. Perhaps it's the hole a man has when he doesn't get to be a father. He'd never let you see it. In fact, he'd convince you of the opposite. Like he'd convinced himself.
Nan A2 sữa mát Thụy Sĩ, công thức đầu tiên kết hợp đạm A2 và 5-HMO giúp tăng cường đề kháng.
I could never have imagined that a wee creature washing up at his feet would change everything.
Hello there. It was March. It was the 3rd of March, actually, when I was lucky enough to first meet her. She was just a bag of bones. What are you doing here? She was eating a crab. And apparently when otters eat crabs, it takes more energy to get into them than they get from them. So it wasn't a good sign. Otters are normally so shy here. For her to be so relaxed around me meant she must have been desperate. Hello. I don't know where she came from, but I heard that a mother otter had been killed on the road near the house. So I just assumed it was her mum, and she was just too young to be fending for herself. Maybe I was her last resort. She was vulnerable and she was alone. And it took me back to a moment in my own life, in my childhood, where I was in a situation that felt like I was alone. It was a horrible feeling. It was an exposed feeling. And I immediately transferred that feeling onto her.
Good morning, girl. How are you? Are you hungry? Come on in. Come on. Watch the fingers.
As she got stronger, we started spending more time together. Until eventually, what started out as a chance encounter turned to trust. And it took me back to a moment in my own life, in my childhood, where I was in a situation that felt like I was alone. It was a horrible feeling. It was an exposed feeling. And I immediately transferred that feeling onto her.
Good morning, girl. How are you? Are you hungry? Come on in. Come on. Watch the fingers.
As she got stronger, we started spending more time together. Until eventually, what started out as a chance encounter turned to trust.
Leave the engine alone, Otter.
Yes, that's the petrol can. I named her Molly. I don't really know why. It just kind of popped into my head. She brought a wee smile to my face and it just stayed with me.
I'm not sure Billy knew what Molly needed back then. She didn't need a friend. She needed a mother.
What are you planting?
Your favourite.
Well, Livingston daisies. Sounds lovely. Until Molly comes and digs them up.
I'll tell you, if that otter digs them up, I am going to hold you responsible. You don't see Jade do that. Perhaps because Molly had lost her own family, she quickly became part of ours. It was like she was lonely and wanted some company. Billy bought a book on otters to find out what she needed, but it didn't have the answers. So he just decided to try and find out himself.
In you come. Just call your bath up for you.
She's not a sea otter, even though she lives in the sea. She's a river otter, and her fur apparently needs fresh water to wash the salt out of it. She has no body fat. Her fur's all she's got to keep her warm, so if it loses condition, she'll die very quickly here.
You having a good rub? Well, just you rub and dry yourself off. I'll get washed sometime.
Maybe that's why she spends so much time rubbing in my jacket after her bath. She seems to sleep a lot, so I reckon she needs a nice bed. One of the things about getting to know Molly has been getting to know the different moods she's in. Sometimes she turns up and just wants to hang out. Sometimes she rocks up and she's angry, like she's in a bad mood. Sometimes she just wants to dig up Susan's flowers. Maybe Maybe that's why she spends so much time rubbing in my jacket after her bath. In my jacket after her bath. She seems to sleep a lot, so I reckon she needs a nice bed. One of the things about getting to know Molly has been getting to know the different moods she's in. Sometimes she turns up and just wants to hang out. Sometimes she rocks up and she's angry, like she's in a bad mood. And sometimes she just wants to dig up Susan's flowers. And she's fussy, sometimes really fussy. Her favourite food seems to be salmon, but I can't afford that too often. So she tends to get haddock or mackerel.
Getting Molly back to health took over our lives that spring. Until, eventually, everything just seemed to revolve around fish.
That one? A bite? Nothing. Don't think I don't know why we're out here.
What do you mean?
You know what I mean.
I'm out here to catch some fish for our tea.
We were out to catch fish for Molly.
You wanted haddock, though.
I'd like some haddock, but I don't see a lot of the haddock that comes in.
Well, she's had the odd small haddock.
She gets all the haddock.
Oh!
Oh! Come on.
Just set the box down. I'll aim for it. 2 moving targets is too many. Oh, that's good. We know they're down there. Can you hold this? And I'll release him. Molly will enjoy that.
If we weren't out fishing, Billy was on the phone, calling whoever he could to get more fish. It was costing us a fortune. But it was clear Molly was getting stronger by the day.
Trúng quà bất ngờ, túi du lịch và triệu quà khác. Mua La Vie ngay.
I knew I was underwater. I just didn't realize I was this underwater.
If you're stressed about your paper, just get Grammarly. It's free.
Billy decided we needed a new freezer. Because he'd filled the other one with fish for Molly.
Okay, so if you could just steady it, I'll lift it and slip it onto the ground.
You're going to give it a clean before you put it inside?
Yeah, we can do, but it's clean on the inside.
It's filthy on the outside.
Yeah, okay, but... Yeah, we can get it clean.
Is that bird poop?
No. You ready?
Yeah.
No rush. Watch your back. Right, next wee bit. Okay, perfect.
Get your kicks on the B9076. You thought Makuro was nice? Why not try North Maven?
It was impossible to get cross with Billy because he adored Molly. Because he adored Molly.
I think if I'm honest in myself, I don't really have a clue what I'm doing. I can do the obvious stuff. Make sure she's eating well, run her the odd bath. But beyond that, I'm a bit out of my depth. I don't know how old she was when we first met. She can't have been much more than 6 months. She certainly wasn't old enough to survive the winter. So she must still have a lot of life skills to learn. And she's not going to learn them from me just throwing fish at her. I have noticed the otters around here seem to feed on small fish they find in the seaweed.
Molly! Molly! Here! Here!
So if I can maybe teach her how to catch them, that would be a start.
Molly! Molly, come on. Molly girl. Look. Look here. Not there. Look what I'm showing you. Come on, you're the otter. You're supposed to be good at this. Molly, come on. Molly girl. Molly. You're not really getting the hang of this, are you? Is that good? Are you enjoying your supper? Enjoying your supper? I'm glad I can help you. Where are you going now? Where are you going?
She seems to have this little switch in her head. When it flicks, she's off.
They weren't so dissimilar, Billy and Molly. They both seemed to have an extraordinary ability to concentrate on one thing. for about 15 minutes. Which, when you're building an extension on your house and you're a year over schedule, can sometimes be quite hard to live with.
Sometimes I know you. But you know it's true. And I adore you.
I went into the shed one day and an Amazon parcel had arrived. Now normally I'm the shopper, but it didn't have my name on it, it had Billy's name on it. And I opened it and it was a bag of coloured balls. And my first thought was, surely to goodness he has not bought these for Molly.
Please no, no. Will you be there too? Yeah. I know that I will. When you go away, gotta go.
I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. I feel a bit daft sometimes. But then I see how happy she is when she's playing. If she had a family, they'd be rough and tumbling. But I'm all she's got. And I have bills to pay.
Billy's job at the energy recovery plant often meant he'd be away from home on long shifts. So I'd have to step in.
Hello. Oh, hi. It's a strange one, this one. I'm not phoning about the dog. We have a wild otter that comes and visits us pretty much daily just now. And we've noticed that she's got quite a hurl in her chest and coughs a bit. And we're just wondering if she might need some help, medication help.
Crab sticks in the soup, and it's not the best.
Well, for those of us who've just joined us, we're talking Cullen skink.
I'm a fan of oxtail, but it seems to have gone out of fashion in the 2020s.
It's a dying soup.
Yeah, the nose is a bit...
Hello, little one. This is going to make you feel better. You ready? Whoa. Good girl. Good girl.
Having Molly in his life gave Billy a sense of responsibility, which he thrived on. But part of being a parent is learning when that responsibility fills a need in your children and when it fills a need in you.
Dutch Lady mới, thêm vitamin C giúp đề kháng vững vàng, cùng đạm, canxi, vitamin D.
Billy didn't seem to want to leave the confines of our garden with Molly. It was like he was trying to convince himself that she needed him more than she actually did, by pretending that she didn't have a life beyond the garden. But she did. As Jade and I discovered on our morning walks.
Hello. Hello. Hello, Molly.
She'd spend a lot of time fishing in the sea loch, quite a distance from the house. I'd see another side of her up there. She was more confident and independent. And being out and about, living like a wild otter, was probably really good for her health. And she had friends. Other otters who she'd play with. One of them was a male that came by the house occasionally. Billy called him Bozo. He was quite a bruiser. He was quite a bruiser. But to see Molly out with Bozo made me realise that although she was a huge part of Billy's life, he was just one part of hers. I wasn't sure how that would make him feel. So I just kept it mine and Molly's wee secret. I was glad she had another life beyond our life. Because, of course, if she hadn't, I probably wouldn't have seen my husband. But then, she made him happy. And he made me happy. And isn't that what love is? Letting someone be themselves because that person is everything you need.
Sweet dreams of you. Every night.
Jade, you want to go walkies? Come on, walkies. Jade, come. Jade, come. Come. Jade. Jade. Jade, in a hand. Come. Molly girl, are you coming too? Come on, let's go Rutland. Come. Come. Molly girl. Come. Look at you, catching your own.
There was a point when Billy's relationship with Molly flipped. From him being there for her to her being there for him.
Molly, you've totally got the hang of this. You're catching far more than I can find. Look at you. You're a pro.
Molly's awoken a little bit of me that had been lying dormant. It's like she's shown me how to be a kid again. That fascination, that joy that we somehow seem to allow ourselves to lose as we get older.
It's unusually warm in Shetland today. That fine weather is expected to stay. Certainly over the next few days, as high pressure pushes up from Scotland and the rest of Northern Europe. Temperatures.
As Molly began to need less time and care, Billy could finally get on with finishing our house. The delay was putting a huge pressure on us. I remember just being so pleased our lives were getting back on track. Until he came in one evening with a big smile on his face and explained that he'd finished the house and would I like to come and see it. And I nearly suggested he go and live in it.
We call these a button ben. Just a kitchen, living room and a bedroom. Like what our house used to be.
I got the Wi-Fi into Molly's house today.
You've got the Wi-Fi?
Wi-Fi? Yeah.
So Molly has Wi-Fi in her house?
Well, she doesn't.
And I don't have Wi-Fi in
Well,
our
she
half the
doesn't
house.
realise she's got Wi-Fi. It's for her camera. but yeah, I suppose technically she's got Wi-Fi in all of her house. Yeah, okay. Well, darling, we can sort that out. I'll get you an extra thing.
But you've been saying that for such a long time.
I know, but...
And then I find that you've put Wi-Fi into Molly's house.
I know.
And as you say, she doesn't even know she has Wi-Fi.
I'll get you a new Wi-Fi router for your birthday.
Do not even think about it.
Christmas?
I've rigged her wee house with a camera. And a special app that tells me when she's home.
As fun as Molly's new house was, and as much as we loved watching her in it, I think it marked the point where Billy realised he may have gone too far. Billy always said that he needed to get Molly to a point where she could survive the winter without his help. And as the summer days gave way to the long nights of autumn, like it or not, he was forced to face that commitment. We started to see another otter coming by the house, usually at dusk. And then one evening, we realised who it was. It was Bozo. And he was looking for Molly.
I should be happy for her. But instead, I feel kind of protective. That's my wee girl. It's hard watching her go off with him. But there's nothing I can do about it. I guess all I can do is just let go a little. I'm going to stop feeding her. I don't want to, but I know I should.
I will never forget that morning. It was a moment so fragile. And I think Billy knew that. It was like he was banking memories of something he knew could never last. Molly visited a few more times over the next couple of weeks. And then she just stopped coming. Winter came quickly to Shetland that year, until, once again, life was ruled by the wind and the cold and the angry North Atlantic.
I found a dead otter on the beach this morning. I thought it was Molly, but when I got closer, I realised it was a wee cub. Maybe it got lost in a storm, separated from its mum perhaps. I was going to leave it for the gulls, but I couldn't. That was a little personality, a little life. Not just another animal. It was a being. Just like Molly. Just like me.
Billy regretted his decision to stop feeding Molly. He pretended he didn't, but I knew he did. He started leaving fish out for her again, hoping she'd come home. But they only fed the gulls. One month turned into 2. Without any sign of her. The only peace that Billy could find was outside, in the storm. I took Billy to town at the end of January to watch the Uphellia procession. The townsfolk build a Viking galley, parade it around the town, and then burn it in the play park. A tradition? Or maybe just a distraction from the brutal Shetland winters? I hoped it would raise Billy's spirits a little, but his mind was elsewhere.
I never had kids. I don't think people who do have them realise that there's always a part of you that grieves the loss of something you've never had. You live with it, and you deal with it. But loss always runs a little deeper, perhaps. It always seemed crazy to me to spend so long building something beautiful, only to burn it to the ground.
Susan! Susan! Molly! Molly! Molly, girl! Molly! Molly! Where on earth have you been, you little horror? You're home. You picked your night to come. You've no idea what you've put us through.
Girl. You're my wee girl.
It was so nice to see him happy again. She was the sparkle in his eye. And you know what? Give me a man who loves and cares any day over one who doesn't notice. Is that a teat?
I think it is. Wow. She's wriggling around. She can't get comfortable. Look at the size of that belly. She's definitely pregnant. There's no doubt about it. Look, she's marking her bed. She doesn't have all your scatter cushions to worry about. Oh, look at her. To be honest, the way she's lying on her back, I would say she's no far away from having a baby.
Nan A2, sữa mát Thụy Sĩ, công thức đầu tiên kết hợp đạm A2 và 5-HMO giúp tiêu hóa tốt.
How do I feel about Molly being pregnant? When your children grow up, you prepare them, you nurture them, you help them in whatever way you can to get to adulthood and then live their life.
Molly, you're going to have babies. You're going to have babies.
And in a strange kind of parallel way, I feel like I've done that with Molly. It's almost like if Molly comes back with her baby, I'll feel like I've done my job. I've arrived.
By May, Molly's visits became very regular, but we noticed a change in her behaviour. She seemed exhausted, and instead of wanting to hang out and fish around the pontoon, she just wanted to sleep. And she slept a lot. And then one day, when she paid us a visit, we found out why.
Oh, look. Oh. Golly, Miss Molly.
Oh, how cute is that? Molly's a mum, Jade. I mean, that's really big. That must be 9 or 10 weeks old.
He's a bit narky. Oh! Shove over.
Put the teeth away, cub.
I'm trying to get some sleep.
I think it is. I'm tired, you. Get away. So she must be leaving the baby in there, going away fishing and then coming back, because that's it in there all on its own. It looks quite happy.
Soon, Molly's cub would be going everywhere with her. And that's when Billy would need to back right off. So it would keep its fear of humans. But he told me that there was one last thing that he had to do. To say goodbye. So I bought him a gift.
Right, strip. Look at your skin's all red.
Oh. I feel like you're forcing me into this.
I am.
Oh, it's really tight. Oh, there we go.
They're meant to be tight, aren't they?
I don't know. Right, help me get my arm into this sleeve.
Cool.
Oh. There we go. Sort it. It was over a year ago that Molly washed up, right here on this jetty. And there's a whole part of her world that I've never seen or been any part of. She always comes into my world, but I've never taken the step into hers. But I know I should. I want to. To see it with her.
Now she's a mum. It's like she's taken life more seriously. She's still got her sense of fun. That's not gone. And I guess some of that was rubbed off on me. And she's not hassling me for fish, or bothering me for some attention, or digging up Susan's flowers in the garden, or pooping in my boat, or chasing Jade from her ball. She's just her. Completely unattached from me. See the creature beyond the character. So graceful, absolutely in her element. Just perfect. And then that little switch in her head flicks, and she's off. And I'm left alone. Except I'm not, am I?
Tilting with each silent kick, shimmer and twisting so bright in fresh belt, heaving.
Except I'm not, am I?
Tilting with each silent. Kick, shimmer and twisting so bright in fresh belt, heaving the cool at your neck. Turn water to wind as you swing through the sea. Surface, resurface again. When you plunge in tender as ever, light around you glimmers. Suddenly you're out of view, but not alone, 'cause I sit dry throated on warm stone.
I'm cold, my wetsuit's digging into my neck. My mask's leaking and the salt water's stinging my eyes. And I need a wee, but I don't care. Because I'm lost to this. and that line that separates us from nature. Molly's world from mine. If she showed me anything, it's that there is no line.
Return with the song of the skylark. Return with the song of the skylark. In the cool of today, we all carry on. Stand with the legs of a heron. Let water pass over peat under the burn.
Molly came into our lives probably when we needed her most. And she changed us.
It's a good size.
She opened our eyes again.
Have a look.
Reminded us of who we were, not who we'd become.
I've lost them. Oh, there we are.
Beauty's a powerful thing when it catches you off guard. And Molly showed us that. And she knew nothing about it.
When I see you close or deep, like atmosphere on water, suddenly you are beyond, gone with a jolt, as I sit here holding by your hand. I'll sit here waiting by your home.
What will we have for dinner?
Haddock?
I am sick of haddock.
Well, we've got quite a lot to get through. We've got a whole freezer full. Present. This is for you. Oh. Good.
Anna's hummingbirds don't migrate, and they're incredibly tough for such small birds. Their environment is so fraught with peril. It's amazing that they make it through their first year. It's amazing they even make it out of the nest. And that's why I film them, because each one is such a discovery. Each one is such a miracle. You know, it comes from an egg the size of a Tic Tac and turns into one of the most fascinating birds on the planet. How does it do that? Documenting hummingbirds has taught me that some of our planet's best kept secrets exist right in our own backyards. We have a hummingbird nest in our yard, and it's right above that little table set that you see. It's in a branch in the pear tree. Right there. The first bird I ever noticed was Sweetie Bird. I'd never seen a hummingbird in our yard, and especially one feeding a chick. So I grabbed my camera and I got a couple of pictures, and I thought, that's great. I got a picture of a hummingbird feeding her chick on the branch. And I thought, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The next day I went back and she was doing it again. I thought, wow, I get to do this twice. And it wasn't too long after that I found a nest. She came in and landed on the nest, and the chicks came out of the nest to get the food, and it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. I thought, well, I'll never get to see this again. But I did. In one calendar year, she had 6 nests. There's the little babies. So Sweetie Bird really sparked my curiosity, and she's a big part of why I've spent 15 years filming hummingbirds. It turns out that there's not a lot of people that do this. And I laugh because it sounds so ridiculous. I mean, I've filmed somewhere about 120 hummingbird nests from egg to conclusion, whether that's flight or the finale. Every nest is like a book. You open it, you start to see what's happening, and it draws me in. And it might come on the first day or it might come on the last day. But there's always something fascinating in there that I've never seen before. And my whole thing about videoing birds is getting close. So when you see something full screen that in real life is only that big, it opens up another world. The male hummingbirds are nice to look at. They're flashier and more vibrant, but they don't do any of the hard work. At best, they give moral support. The females do all the heavy lifting, and I'm fascinated by their tenacity. Every mother tries with everything she's got to give her chick the best chance, and I want every chick to make it. But this is nature, and that just isn't the case. My goal is to document as many hummingbird nests as I can, and hopefully uncover some new information about their secret lives. To the best of my knowledge, I'm the first person that's been able to document one hummingbird having 6 nests in one calendar year. So I think it's really cool that somebody like myself that has no background in biology or ornithology has been able to make contributions as a citizen scientist to expand the knowledge of Anna's hummingbirds. So I love my day job of selling windows because I get to make my own schedule. If I get a call from a customer, but I'm filming a hummingbird in the backyard, I'm not coming out to the customer's house. I'm going to see them later because I got the bird to see right now. There's a few milestones in every mother hummingbird's life that I look forward to. And it all starts with the building of the nest. When the nest is done, it's about 1.5 inches high and about 2 inches in diameter. But it takes about 400 visits by a hummingbird to build that nest. That's 400 visits with a piece of spider web, a piece of lichen, a cattail seed, a little piece of fluff, and they take their feet and they knead things together so that they start to form a ball. After about 2 weeks or so, the hummingbird has built a perimeter around itself, and it blends in incredibly. Some of them you really can't see unless the hummingbird's sitting on it. That nest has to sit there for about 6 weeks, undisturbed. If a squirrel runs over the branch, it'll knock it off. If a hawk sees a hummingbird, it'll go after the hummingbird. There are all these perils that you just don't really think about as a human. This year, a bird that I named Sunshine has chosen to build her nest in my yard, in the same tree that Sweetie Bird built her nest in 15 years ago. She worked on it for a couple of days, and she was off to a great start. But then we had horrific rain and tremendous cold temperatures, and then we had snow for about 10 days or so. So it really dissuaded her from building anything because she was just trying to survive. And I thought, well, that's it. Her nest is gone. She's not going to build it there again. You know, that was the opportunity. But she came back. In the span of 2 or 3 days, that nest went from about 1/4 inch to about 1.5 inches tall. And she was just working on it like crazy. She must have really had to get her eggs out. You know, they were coming, whether she was ready or not. So just the toughness of this little bird over the first few weeks that I've been observing her is incredible. Here you go. Okay, see you later. I have a feeling there's one over here. Take a look at what that is up there. All right, I think we found her nest. Sunshine's not the only bird I'm following this year. I'm also following Bailey. I started filming Bailey last year. I saw a hummingbird nest that drew my attention. And when I reviewed the footage, I realized that this bird had a broken leg. How does a bird with one leg build a nest? Well, it's pretty tough. If she's holding onto the branch with her one leg, she can only use her beak. So sometimes she'll be balancing with a wing on a branch to get her other leg to be able to do something. So her nests are not as put together as a hummingbird with 2 legs. But it's fascinating to watch how she deals with her disability. The other day I showed up with the flower feeder for Bailey, and she buzzed around my head before she decided to have some food. To me, it felt like a greeting. She's happy to see me. And who's to say you can't have a drink with a friend from another species? That's what the flower feeder is all about. Have a friend, my drink. Have a friend, my drink. Have a drink, my friend. Let's see what Sophie's reaction is. Hey, Sophie. Okay, come here. Okay, are you ready? Okay, good dog. Good dog. That was great. That was good. So this is a dog elevator, and we can raise it up high enough to get the dog from the ground level to the balcony because she's having a hard time walking. But it also allows us a platform above the bird's nest so we can get a better shot into the bird's nest. So that's a lot of fun. It's working out. Bird hasn't seemed to mind it much. I was working cautiously yesterday to see how she'd react, and didn't seem to faze her. She just kept coming back to her nest, and she's sitting up there now. Just watching. I finished the roof of the elevator just in time for another milestone in Sunshine's journey. She just laid her eggs, and I know this because her behavior changed. She went from frantically building her nest to sitting on it, and she only gets off now for a few minutes per hour, and only to go get some more material or to get some food. People say, how can you watch one nest for 6 weeks? And that's the most fascinating thing in the world to me. That's how. So the other day, I came here to check on Bailey and see how she was doing, and I was filming her for about 20 minutes or half an hour. She wasn't going back to her nest, and it was unusual behavior for a bird that just laid eggs. And I looked down at the base of the tree, and yeah, she had an egg sitting down at the base of the tree, a broken egg, so there was no even trying to get it back in the nest. Oh, look at that. See how fragile it is? So for it to fall from a height of about 15 or so feet, yeah, they don't do too well after that. So it's unfortunate. And that's really the hardest part about doing this. You feel a loss. And you know, I've seen somewhere about 120 nests now, and half of them make it. And that's what I choose to focus on. If I went the other way, I'd be really depressed. You still feel a little bit of pain when you lose a friend. So all you can do is keep going. You know, and you sort of have to look at the bigger picture. And when you look for it, there's more life somewhere else. There's a lot of joy to be found in this, and that's the best part of being alive. is enjoying beautiful things around you. Well, those chicks are doing good. There's your little dose of joy for the day. Over the past few days, I've been watching Sunshine closely. And it turns out that only one of her eggs has hatched. But the chick that survived, I've named it Solo, is looking really healthy. And now Sunshine's job is to feed Solo every 20 to 30 minutes so that Solo is strong enough to fledge in about 3 or 4 weeks. This might be the day. Looking pretty spry. It looks like he's ready. Because there's only one chick, that means that Solo got a lot more food, and there wasn't competition, so Solo's grown quite big. He goes. Yay! Little Solo's free. What a great day in the life of a bird. So there she is going back to the nest. Yeah, chick's not there, Mom. Oh, she found him. Oh, she's feeding him. Oh, that's so great. You know, it's a real victory to see them get out of the nest and be healthy, and just fills me with joy. It's like the best day ever. It's like a big weight has been lifted off my shoulders. What's next for me? I don't know, maybe I'll take a day off. Amazing what you find when you just stop and look around, eh?
Deep in the heart of the Philippine forest, among the ancient giant trees and lush greenery, lives one of the rarest animals in the world. A creature so closely linked to national identity and pride that it has become an inseparable symbol of the entire Philippines. It is the Philippine eagle, the largest eagle on the planet in terms of length and wing surface. Unfortunately today, the fate of this beautiful predator is hanging by a thread. Still, his story has brought hope. It has joined together two distant countries, the Philippines and the Czech Republic, who are both working hard to ensure that this majestic creature does not become extinct. Our story begins on the island of Mindanao, where we set off with a team of Czech zoologists.
We came to the Philippines because here, on the southernmost island of Mindanao, the last small population of the Philippine eagle still survives. It's the most endangered eagle in the world, and there are only 350 to 400 pairs left in the wild, which is very few. To stabilize the population, there needs to be at least once, preferably twice that many eagles.
The fact that we're on this island is no coincidence. Mindanao is home to the only breeding, rescue and rehabilitation facility for Philippine eagles.
Philippine eagle is now... This is the most beautiful deer in the Philippines. But they are also extremely rare and are at risk of disappearing forever. That's why I want to understand why their populations declined and find out what we can do about it. But to do that, we need to find them in the wild. That's why I hopped on a plane to Negros, an island with some of the highest levels of endemic species here in the Philippines. And this island is actually pretty special to me because this place opened my eyes to the importance of the natural world when I visited a protected sanctuary called Danhugan Island. Negros Island also hosts one of the most important and biodiverse wetlands in the country. So I thought to myself, if I really want to see wildlife, this is the place to be.
Alam mo, Renz, ganda talaga ng Pilipinas. As in, sobrang solid nung biodiversity natin, not just in terms of animals, but plant life. So there are over 50,000 different species of plants and animals dito sa Pilipinas, at marami sa kanila ay endemic.
So that is Sir Greg Yan. He's a wildlife photographer and award-winning journalist. And if you search the internet for photos of endangered animals in the Philippines, there's a big chance that he took that shot.
So I photographed such animals as the Philippine pangolin sa Palawan, the tamaraw sa Mindoro. We looked for rare sharks up and down the Tubataha Reefs, cetaceans sa Bahis at sa Tanyon Strait.
I grew up watching documentaries and survival series. And I was really obsessed with Jurassic Park. So taking on this project is the closest I'll get to stepping into that world.
Ang wildlife spotting or wildlife photography in general, medyo random yan. Hindi mo ma-assure na bawat expedition na imamount mo ay makakapag-come into contact with the animals that you're looking for.
So I asked his advice before going to Negros because Sir Greg, along with Earth Journalism Network, has been supporting me in my mission to find and document these animals in the wild.
For this journey, Renz, you have to do your research. You have to read as many scientific papers about the species na gusto mong puntahan. And then when you are ready, you'll have to fly down to the island of Negros. Very famous siya kasi siya ang sugarcane plantation center of this country. So it's the sweetest island.
After doing my research, I found out that many of the threatened animals in the country is in Negros Island. But what really caught my eye was the Visayan spotted deer. Tingin nyo ba mahirapan akong hanapin yung spotted deers?
Ang spotted deer, sa totoo lang, hindi pa nga ako nakakita ng wild spotted deer. Mas nakikita ko pa sila in zoos all around the world. Isa yan sa pinakamagagandang deer species sa buong mundo. At ang Visayan warty pig, they're very plucky, very cool looking kasi meron silang mohawk. Medyo colorful sila as wild pig species.
Now, the story of the Visayan spotted deer is actually closely related to the story of the Visayan warty pigs, the rarest pig species in the world. And they can live harmoniously in the same environment.
Medyo mahirap talaga sila. It took me 20 years to see my first wild deer in the Philippines. Consider yourself very, very lucky, Renz, kung makakita ka ng deer, and most especially, yung pinaka-rare pa na deer dito, which is yung Visayan spotted deer.
Isa kong ipapromise sa'yo, kapag nakita ko yung Visayan spotted deer, ipapatato ko sila dito.
Magpapatato ka?
Itatato ko siya.
Ipapagdasal natin na makita mo nga yan para magkaroon si Renzo ng tattoo dito.
So my name is Monica Atienza, and I am the veterinarian of Talarak Foundation.
By any chance, related ka ba kay Kuya Kim Atienza?
No, hindi.
Before I went to the forest, I began my journey at the Negros Forest Park in Bacolod City. This is a conservation facility by Talarak Foundation. Sobrang amazing na makakita ng ganitong mga deer dito. Napakaganda nila tignan up close. Para kang nasa isang Disney movie. But the reason why I'm here is to really familiarize myself with the animals that we will be looking for next down south of the Negros Island in Bayawan. So meron silang forest doon, and sinabi nila na merong mga Visayan spotted deer at saka Visayan warty pig. So these animals are both listed as endangered in the IUCN Red List. IUCN is the International Union for Conservation of Nature, an organization that assesses the conservation status of the species worldwide, classifying them into categories like near threatened, vulnerable, endangered, or critically endangered. So in Pokemon terms, they are like the legendary Pokemon of the Philippines. Ano yung mga threats? Bakit pakonti ng pakonti yung population nila?
So initially kasi, Negros is really forested. Around probably 80 to 90% of Negros Island is forest. We lost a lot of big trees, and then we lost a lot of forest cover. That's why during 1990s, Negros Forest and Ecological Foundation started the conservation breeding of the Visayan spotted deer.
So before going there, I always thought that Negros had such an abundant biodiverse environment. Pwede ko bang makita yung warty pigs dito?
Tingnan natin dito kung okay lang na anuhin mo yung camera mo from sa taas.
Minsan kasi, yung home forest ng spotted deer or yung mountain range kung saan maraming Visayan warty pig, biglang nagiging sugarcane plantation or nagiging condominium complex or nagiging resort na may swimming pool. So, nawala na yung totoo nilang bahay.
So, in reality, Negros is the opposite of having rich biodiversity. At least, not anymore. Okay, so we are currently on the way to Bayawan, and it's gonna be a very long 4
4-hour ride, and actually the hard part of the journey, it's really the logistics, looking for the permits, traveling here to there. So I really hope that when I go to Bayawan, that we will be able to find the animals that we are looking for, because these animals, they really need our help to spread awareness and help the conservation efforts for them, no? Because looking at an ecosystem approach, pag nawala sila, tayo rin yung mapapahamak. And pinipep talk ko lang yung sarili ko before this 4-hour drive para ma-motivate ako sa napakalayong journey na to. Let's go.
I knew that finding these animals was never a guarantee. So I started questioning if it was even worth it, diba? The 4-hour ride, the preparation, bringing all the gear. But I remembered the feeling when I found the dugong when I was swimming in Coron, or the long-tailed macaques when I was exploring the forest in Mindoro. Without taking risks, there will be no reward. So after checking into Bayawan City and driving all the way to the nature reserve, the risks just got higher.
So habang nagmamaneho, hindi ko nakita may humps. Dumiretso lang ako tapos nahulog. Nahulog ang aking camera. Shit. Kakabili ko pa lang nito.
Ano yung camera mo na ano? Nalaglag?
Nalaglag kanina.
Boss, ano mga nagawin?
Thank you. Dito po yung office ni Sir Justin. Dito po yung pasok. Sige po, thank you. Hindi ko pa po natitignan.
At that point, I finally met Sir Justin Magbanwa of Talarak Foundation. So he gave me a quick tour of the headquarters and a few words of encouragement.
Yeah. You're only staying for 3 days, no? That's good part.
Without wasting any time, we went straight into the forest to find the Negros bleeding heart. This bird is listed as critically endangered in the IUCN Red List. So I was very skeptical that we would even find one.
Hanggang umaabot ng 9 or 10.
And surprisingly, we did find the bird, but with the help of the trackers and the devices to pinpoint its location. Although they were very quick and elusive, so I wasn't able to shoot them properly. So I'm really gonna keep my eyes wide open so I can take better shots of them. Because the next one is the main event, finding the pig and the deer.
Dito tayo maghihintay ng ating mga pigs. Okay, so unfortunately, umalis na daw yung mga Visayan Warty pig. Babalik tayo later, pero to increase our chances, I decided to just stay here and sleep here para we can have more flexibility and we have more time to spend dito sa forest. Tara, lipat muna tayo. Alright, so this is day 1 and sobrang daming nangyari so far. I ended up staying here dito sa Bayawan Forest Reserve ng Talarak. So umuwi muna ako and then nag-pack.
So this procedure is to alleviate the risk of ASF entering the facility. So African swine fever is a highly contagious and deadly disease for the pigs with no cure or vaccine.
and it tends to be more rampant in an area if it's hot. So during summer time, doon talaga maraming cases of African swine fever. If we go in the forest, we don't know if we actually have the virus in us. So yung mga tao kasi usually yung nag-transmit ng disease.
Okay. Pwede tayong may virus pero hindi natin siya nafe-feel.
Yes.
And it's one of the biggest factors that could drive the pigs into extinction. So climate change with the rising temperatures and the shifting ecosystems, it creates ideal conditions for the spread of diseases and viruses by increasing the survival range of pathogens and their carriers. So going inside that forest felt a little bit like going into a Jurassic Park. And pagdating ko dito, they were fixing the trackers for one of the bleeding hearts. Isa to sa mga conservation efforts nila to really observe, study, and understand their habits and to know more about these animals.
So this place is a safe place for the animals, basically. They were all once, back then, found in this area. Well, they were found all throughout Negros before deforestation happened. So we're bringing them back to areas where they once belonged to.
Thank you. Bye, Blue. The funniest thing about this day is that while having dinner outside, randomly, one of the Visayan Warty pigs decided to visit us. So the rarest pig species in the world was just there, circling us around the cabin. At that time, you can tell that it's a very curious pig. Unfortunately, hindi ko dala yung camera ko. Tomorrow, hopefully, makita natin sila up close again. I will not miss another opportunity to shoot them, so I will keep my camera close by.
Animals are actually the rightful owners of a lot of these areas kung saan tayo ngayon nakatira. And every time that we see them in the wild where they belong, not inside a cage, pinapakita natin in the wild, kung nakita natin sila, kung anong mukha ng mundo nung maayos pa yung balance between humans and nature.
Although I'm happy to see these animals being protected here, it's also sad to know that they need this kind of protection. At this point, I'm still trying to figure out what really happened to the animals in Negros, what happened to the forests here. But one thing is certain. And just when I thought the night was over, hey guys, this one will be a 3-part series, so I hope you guys enjoyed this one because the stakes will continue to rise as the mission to find the spotted deer continues. And you can watch it over here.
Trà Dr. Thanh với 9 loại thảo mộc thanh lọc cơ thể. Mỗi ngày thanh lọc là một ngày tươi.
Over the years, I've made quite a number of shrimp ecosystems, and in this video, I've put all my favourites in one place. Hopefully you'll find some inspiration or just sit back and relax. Let's waste no time and get straight into it, starting at the mini swamp ecosystem. In this video, I'll show you how to make a mini indoor pond that doesn't even require a filter. I'll show you how it's evolved after 120 days of growth, and I'll even add some tiny inhabitants. Here's the tank that I'll be using for this build. I'll try and leave a link in the description to something similar. The idea that I've got for this mini pond is to create a swamp-style scape with lots of vertical branches coming out the water, as well as a lot of immersed plant growth. Add some tiny inhabitants. Here's the tank that I'll be using for this build. I'll try and leave a link in the description to something similar. The idea that I've got for this mini pond is to create a swamp-style scape with lots of vertical branches coming out the water, as well as a lot of immersed plant growth. I'm going to start off by trying to create these vertical branches, and for that I've got some cork bark. I've got a good variety of pieces to experiment with, so let's get straight to work. I've quickly realised that these larger pieces are a bit too big for this build, but this long branch should work much better. Obviously it's way too long as one single piece, so I'm going to take some measurements and cut it down into lots of smaller branches. I think that fits the scale much better, so I'm going to go ahead and cut the rest of the branch down. Now that I've cut that single branch down into lots of smaller pieces, it's time to start creating the hardscape. It's going to be a nightmare balancing all these pieces, so I'm going to use some blue tack to hold them in place whilst I create the scape. This makes it much easier to try multiple different hardscapes until I find something that I'm happy with. After a short while, this is what I've settled on, and I think it really fits the idea that I had in my head. Obviously, the blue tack on the bottom needs to be replaced with something a bit more permanent, so let's do that now. I'm simply going to apply a small amount of this aquarium silicone on the base of the wood and then pushing it down onto the glass. One by one, I'll repeat the same process until all the branches are locked down. The silicone is now fully dried and all the branches are nice and sturdy, so I can now start thinking about the plants. I want to have plants growing from under and out of the water on the left and right side of the scape, with little to no plants in the centre. In order for them to grow healthy and strong, they're going to need a source of nutrients. This here is some garden compost, and it's going to act as the primary source of nutrients for the plants. I'm pouring in a thin layer on the left and right side of the scape, which is where the majority of the planting is going to take place. Left as it is, the nutrients from the compost are going to leach out into the water and cause massive algae problems. The simple and easy solution to this is to simply cap off the compost with some sand. I'm starting with a fine layer in the middle, and then I'll add a couple centimeters on either side. As it is, the sand looks a bit plain and boring, so let's fix that. Here I've got some fine gravel, some pea gravel and some larger pea gravel. A mix of all three of these as well as the sand should help bring a nice natural look to the scape. To add a bit more detail to the base of the pond, I'm going to place in some of these rounded pebbles. I'm really happy with how it's coming along so far, and the vision inside my head is definitely taking shape. Before adding any plants, I'm giving the entire tank a really good spray down. A fine coat of sand helps bring all the pebbles together, and that should do it for the hardscape.
đổ mồ hôi. Revive với công thức iHydrate bổ sung muối khoáng cùng các vitamin.
As I mentioned earlier, I want plants growing from under and out of the water on the left and right side of the scape, so that's what I'm going to work on first. This is some Rotala that I pulled out of one of my aquariums. It's an aquatic plant that grows great underwater, and if given the chance it grows great above water as well. I'm using some long tweezers to plant the stems right through the sand into the nutrient-rich compost that's underneath. Right side of the scape. As I mentioned earlier, I want plants growing from under and out of the water on the left and right side of the scape, so that's what I'm going to work on first. This is some Rotala that I pulled out of one of my aquariums. It's an aquatic plant that grows great underwater, and if given the chance it grows great above water as well. I'm using some long tweezers to plant the stems right through the sand into the nutrient-rich compost that's underneath. As these are aquatic plants, they're prone to drying out, so a light spray down every now and then is essential. This next plant to go in will stay under the water, but it's going to slowly creep and spread throughout the scape. Next, I want to plant in some epiphytes to add a bit more detail to the central areas of the scape. First to go in is this Anubias that's been growing on a rock. Next, it's going to nutrient-rich compost that's underneath. As these are aquatic plants, they're prone to drying out, so a light spray down every now and then is essential. This next plant to go in will stay under the water, but it's going to slowly creep and spread throughout the scape. Next, I want to plant in some epiphytes to add a bit more detail to the central areas of the scape. First to go in is this Anubias that's been growing on a rock. Next, I'll add some small Bucephalandra. Usually, I'd wedge these plants in gaps in the hardscape, but as there's not many areas to do that, I'm going to glue them to some stones instead. This doesn't damage the plant so long as you don't use a whole load of glue. As these are epiphytes, they don't require the nutrients in the compost to grow, and they simply thrive by pulling nutrients from the water column. Next, I'll plant in a few of these Bolbitis ferns. To plant them inside, I'll once again use the super glue to attach them to the cork branches. At this point, you might be wondering how this mini pond is going to work without a filter. The answer to that is actually relatively simple. The plants inside will act as the natural filtration and pull harmful nutrients from the water and use them to grow. Not only does this work really well, but it also results in a very low maintenance setup that almost just takes care of itself. This small piece of paper towel will help disperse the water and stop it from disrupting the scape or uprooting the plants. As for the water that I'm using, it's just regular tap water that I've dechlorinated. With the tank filled up, I love how it looks, but I do think that it's missing one essential element. A mix of floating plants is really going to help bring a swampy look to this mini indoor pond. All that's left to do now is to let the plants grow in and establish before adding some tiny creatures. Four months later, and this tiny pond has really transformed into a mini slice of nature. Over that time, I've made a couple additions, including this Hygrophila and Pelea glauca on the left and right side of the scape. The Rotala seemed to struggle to grow up and out of the water like I hoped it would, but these are a good replacement. By far, the biggest addition to this ecosystem takes place under the water. About a month ago, I introduced a small group of these red cherry shrimp. They really have been thriving and do a great job at cleaning up any algae that grows inside. It really is relaxing to sit back and watch them go about their day. They're not the only inhabitants, however, as there's a good number of these tiny snails which work hard to keep the glass nice and clean. As for maintenance, I do a water change every month or so and trim the plants when they get a bit too invasive in the foreground. Other than that, it's pretty much maintenance free. I'd love to hear in the comments if you've ever made a no-filter ecosystem like this one before and if it was successful. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe as I've got plenty more cool builds coming in the near future. As always, thank you for watching. In this video, I'll show you how to make a shrimp ecosystem inside a glass jar. It's super easy to care for, making it perfect for beginners, and it doesn't even need a filter. Now let's get straight into the build. It's going to be a good one. For the lighting, I'm using this LED display light which has a nice wooden base at the bottom. It's relatively low powered, making it perfect for a low tech and low maintenance setup like this one. The glass jar is roughly 5 litres, which is just over 1 US gallon. I've already attached a foam mat to the bottom to ensure that it sits nice and level. I want to keep this setup really low budget with materials that are super easy to source. This here is some garden topsoil. This will go right at the base of the ecosystem and will be the source of nutrients for all the plants inside. You really don't need too much, especially in a small setup like this one. I'll put a list of all the materials and plants used in this build in the description below, along with some links. All I'm doing now is using my hand to flatten it out and make a nice even layer. It really doesn't look like much is in there, but this would be more than enough. I'm now going to completely soak it in water so there'll be no air bubbles trapped down in the substrate. This layer needs to be capped off, otherwise the nutrients will leach out into the water column, which will certainly cause algae issues. To do this, all I'm using is some fine aquarium gravel. You want this layer to be at least a couple centimeters thick. I've run out of gravel, but some coarse sand is going to work just as well. I'm sloping up the gravel towards the back as this will help create a nice sense of depth inside the jar. Now it's time for the hardscape. I've got this nice piece of driftwood which I think has the potential to look good inside this setup. With it inside the jar, it does seem a little bit too big for this setup, so I'm going to go ahead and chop it down.
Sàn Rockstar trúng 200.000 giải đá nạp 10.000 và 20.000 cùng 10 chuyến đi Mỹ. Sàn Rockstar trúng quà tiền tỷ.
It fits in a lot better, but I'm not loving how it looks, and I do feel like it takes up a bit too much ground space for the plants. Instead, I'm going to try out this spiderwood branch with some trident fern mounted on it. I've had this piece in a setup before, so it's nice and established. Instantly, I think it looks a lot better and much more suiting to the small jar. To give it a bit more I've had this piece in a setup before, so it's nice and established. Instantly, I think it looks a lot better and much more suiting to the small jar. To give it a bit more height and stability inside the setup, I'm going to attach a rock to the base. This will also ensure that it won't float up once the jar is filled with water. I'll attach the rock to the wood using the super glue and tissue method. Don't worry, this method is 100% shrimp safe. Now the glue's dry, I can place the wood back inside the jar and press the rock down into the gravel to make it nice and stable. I've done the same with another piece of spiderwood which will branch out to the right side of the scape. I love the simplicity of this scape and the fact that there's so much ground space for plants, as that's essential in a no-filter ecosystem like this one. I think the foreground of the scape will look nicer with some decorative gravel. This gravel is in no way essential to the scape, but I really like how it looks and think it'll add some nice detail to the foreground. I'm doing my best to spread the gravel out with some long tweezers and then finishing it off with some fine gravel from before. Once these stones are wet, they have some really nice natural colours to them. For the background, I've got 2 pots of Limnophila. This plant is super easy to grow and has some nice bushy leaves which will fill up the background nicely. I've taken them out the pots, removed all the rock wool and split them up into 4 even bundles. I can now take some long tweezers and plant them down into the gravel. I am planting them relatively deep just so they don't float up and they're closer to the nutrients at the base. This is a fast growing plant, so it's going to do a lot of the work in keeping this ecosystem nice and clean. That being said, I am going to have to keep on top of maintenance as I don't want it overgrowing the entire setup. It's already starting to look like a slice of nature, but there's still plenty of plants to come. I think this crypt will act as a nice centerpiece plant. I'm going to plant it just in front of the spiderwood. I'm digging a small hole with the tweezers and then planting the roots down inside. This plant has been grown out of water, so its appearance will change as it adapts to underwater life. I think this Leliopsis will look nice on the left and right side of the scape. With time, hopefully it will send out runners into the foreground. I'm purposely using plants with different shape, colour, size and texture to hopefully add to the natural look of this aquarium. I'm really liking how it's looking so far, but I think some Bucephalandra is going to make it look even better. I've got a couple different species that will add some nice detail to the scape. I'm using a small amount of gel type superglue to mount it down in place. I think some smaller Nubius is also a great addition. Now the planting's complete, this nano aquarium is really taking shape. It's about time this jar gets filled up with water. A small piece of bubble wrap helps disperse the water and stops it from destroying the scape. I often get questions about what water I use for my scapes, and the answer is just regular tap water. Obviously I make sure it's dechlorinated, but that's all there is to it. It's great to see the jar finally filled up with water. Before I can add any inhabitants, the underwater ecosystem needs to be left to establish. It's only been 8 days since I set up this ecosystem jar and it's already looking a whole lot better. Despite there being no filter, there's been no problems with algae or water quality whatsoever. This is a great sign that the plants are doing their job in filtering the water and keeping it nice and clean. As I'm sure you can see, the Limnophila has grown right to the surface, so I'm going to give it a quick trim back. I'll replant these stems after doing a 20% water change. This is the first water change I've done, and I probably won't do another one for another couple weeks. In a no filter setup like this one, I've found it better to do less frequent water changes. This makes the parameters consistent and keeps the ecosystem balanced. That being said, I still like to test the water multiple times a week just to make sure everything's good. Now let's introduce the first inhabitants to this ecosystem. I've got a small group of these tiny snails. They won't really get any bigger than this, and they'll feed on things like algae growing inside the jar. This one landed upside down, but it soon pulled itself upright and started exploring. It's great to see some life in this jar, but I do want to let it establish a little bit longer before introducing any more. The ecosystem jar is now 50 days old, and I'm glad to say that it's thriving. I've done 3 water changes in that time and the jar has been receiving 10 hours of light a day. All the plants have grown in really well and they've been keeping the water quality perfect with no algae in sight. The roots of the plants have found their way down to the nutrient layer, which is a big reason for that. A few weeks ago, I added a small group of cherry shrimp to call this ecosystem their home. Let's see how they're doing. They've really been thriving in this setup and their vibrant red colour really helps them stand out amongst the green plants. They do seem a bit camera shy and swim off as soon as I press record. Upon closer inspection, there's even a few tiny babies roaming throughout the jar. It's always great to see this, as breeding is a sign of a healthy ecosystem. If their population grows too much, I will take some out as I don't want food to become scarce. So far, I haven't put any food inside the ecosystem and they've simply been thriving off the biofilm that grows inside. This also goes for the tiny snails, which as you can see, they've been working hard to keep the glass nice and clean. If you're interested in seeing detailed updates on my ecosystems, be sure to check out my weekly newsletter, Wednesday Updates. It also contains behind the scenes look at upcoming projects, and best of all, it's completely free. I'll put a link in the description so you can check it out. I really hope you found this video useful, and if you've never tried making something like this before, I highly recommend you give it a go. In this video, I'll show you how to make a simple but beautiful nano aquarium for some tiny cherry shrimp. I'm going to use this nano 20cm cube aquarium. It's made from OptiWhite glass and it's already got a self-leveling mat on the bottom. I'll put a link to this tank plus all the other materials that I'll be using in the description. The first thing I want to do is get the background in place. I've cleaned the glass and now I'm placing on a frosted film. I can now use a plastic card to squidge out all the excess water. All that's left to do now is to use a sharp blade to trim it down around the edges of the tank. You certainly don't need a background, but I always think it makes the tank look a lot cleaner. As for the lighting for this tank, I've got this relatively low powered LED light. Now let's start building the ecosystem. Before pouring in the substrate, I'm going to place in this mesh bag of crushed lava rock. This will not only provide a place for beneficial bacteria, but it'll also mean I don't need to use as much substrate. As for the substrate, I'm going to use some Tropica Aquasoil. In a small tank like this one, a 3 litre bag will be more than enough. I'm using my hand to slope the Aquasoil up towards the back, which will help create more depth. I will add some more Aquasoil soon, but firstly I'm going to place in some root tabs. Adding these will really help ensure that the plants inside this tank have enough nutrients to thrive. Instead of pushing them down into the substrate, I'm opening up the capsules and pouring them inside. After pouring in about 3 or 4 capsules, I can now cap it off with even more Aquasoil. With the substrate complete, let's get to work on the hardscape. I've got a good selection of black lava rock which I think will be perfect for this nano aquarium. The scape I've got in mind is lava rocks on the left and right side of the tank with a narrow gap down the middle. I'll then turn the narrow gap into a sand path which will hopefully add a great level of detail to the tank. I'm happy with the placement of these 2 rocks, so what I'm going to do now is add even more substrate in behind them. By doing this, I'll hopefully be able to create a great sense of depth and make this nano aquarium look much deeper than it actually is. You can now see that the narrow path down the centre is starting to take shape. I will add some more substrate and 1 more layer of rocks before moving on. As the Aquasoil is sloped up so steep, it does want to roll down towards the front, but giving it a good spray down helps it stay in place. I'm really liking how it's looking so far and I can already see my idea taking shape. I do think a few spiderwood branches will add a nice contrast to the black lava rock. After a bit of experimentation and super glue, here's how the right side looks. I like how it resembles roots growing over the lava rock. Now I'm going to try and do the same on the left side. Once I'm happy with the placement of the wood, I'm tearing off a small piece of tissue and placing it in between the wood and lava rock. I can then soak the tissue with some liquid type super glue. It dries really quickly and forms a strong bond which holds the wood in place. Once the glue dries, it becomes inert, making it 100% shrimp safe. I'm using multiple pieces of wood to create the illusion that they're one root system growing down over the rocks. I'm really happy with how it's looking, but the white glue marks certainly need to be covered up. To do this, I'm simply applying some super glue and then sprinkling on some crushed black lava rock. This is a super easy and quick way of creating a seamless joint between the wood and the rocks. By gluing everything together, it's made the hardscape nice and sturdy so it's not at risk of being knocked over. I do feel like it's missing some small detailed branches, so I'm going to add them first before moving on to the planting. That's looking much better, so let's start bringing this mini aquarium to life. These here are some pots of Monte Carlo which I've propagated and grown myself. I think this plant will look great in the foreground and in small patches on the left and right side of the sand path. I'm taking the plant and splitting it up into smaller individual sections. I can then take some long tweezers and plant it down into the substrate. I find it much easier to plant when the water level is pretty much at the same level as the substrate. These small patches will grow and spread in no time at all. Next up, I want to add a really nice pop of colour on the left and right side of the scape. I've got a bunch of Rotala cuttings from another tank that would do this perfectly. I want these to grow nice and tall, which will hopefully make the sand path look like it's in a deep valley. For this aquarium, I'm really trying to keep the planting as simple as possible and only use a few species. Don't get me wrong, tanks with loads of different plant species look amazing, but I certainly think there's a place for more simple setups like this one. The last plant I'm adding is a few patches of Bucephalandra. I'm able to wedge the majority of them in gaps between the hardscape, but I am using a small amount of superglue to attach a piece up on this lava rock. Now the planting's complete, I'm giving the tank a light spray down before pouring in the sand down the centre. I'm starting at the top and gradually making my way down to the front. To make an effective sand path, there's one very important thing that you need to do. You need to make sure that it's the widest at the front, with it gradually getting narrower and narrower as it makes its way to the back of the tank. This simple trick adds a great sense of depth as it makes the path look as if it's going off into the distance. Small pieces of lava rock on either side add to the detail, as well as some crushed lava rock sprinkled on top. I absolutely love the depth that the path brings to the tank, and I'm really happy with how the hardscapes turned out. Now let's move on and install the filter. I'm going to use this small hang-on back filter, and I want it to sit in this back corner. The intake, however, is way too long, so I am going to need to make a few customizations. I'm starting by cutting off this small bottom piece, which will allow me to attach the intake back on after cutting down the tube. Now I'm placing the filter on the tank and measuring out where I need to cut off. I can now take the small piece that I cut off and glue it back on. I'm making sure to only glue it on halfway, as the other half is where the intake will attach onto. Now the glue is dry, I can simply push the intake back in place, followed by the sponge, and place it back inside the tank. It fits in perfectly and it's really discreet, which is much better than having a filter inside the tank, which would take away from the overall scape. Before filling up the tank, I am going to make a quick change to the media inside the filter. I'm taking out the small cartridge it came with and replacing it with some ceramic rings and filter foam. Now there's a much greater area for beneficial bacteria and it's super easy to clean out. Now I'm going to quickly install the CO2 system. If you haven't got access to CO2, don't worry, as all the plants inside this setup will still grow great without it. The main difference is that they'll grow faster, more compact, and the reds will have a bit more colour to them. I've already got a CO2 system which is super easy to set up in my tanks, so that's why I'm using it. Now it's finally time to fill the tank up with water. A small piece of paper towel ensures that the water doesn't destroy the scape. All I use for my setups is dechlorinated tap water. All that's left to do is to turn the filter on and let the tank grow in and establish before introducing the shrimp. Six weeks have passed and I'm glad to say that this nano aquarium has established really nicely. All the plants have grown in just how I hoped they would, and the tank is almost unrecognisable from a month and a half ago. My favourite has got to be the dense forest of Rotala on the left and right side of the scape. I've trimmed and replanted the stems multiple times to achieve this look, and I'm really happy with it. The stems have grown a really healthy root system that go all the way down to the bottom of the tank. As I'm sure you remember, I did initially have CO2 running in this setup. I decided to remove it a few weeks ago as the plants were growing so fast that I couldn't keep up with the maintenance. Although the CO2 does help, it goes to show that you can still have a nice healthy setup without it. As for algae, there's some growing on the wood and rocks, but it's really not a problem. The shrimp will likely help clean this up in no time at all. Talking about the shrimp, I think it's about time to introduce them to their new home. These are red cherry shrimp, and they're perfect for a small setup like this one. Hopefully there's a mix of males and females so they can start breeding, but if not, I'll introduce a few more from one of my other setups. After 6 weeks of having nothing in the tank, it's really nice to see these little guys running around and exploring. I want to hear your thoughts. Should I add anything else to this setup or leave it as shrimp only? Let me know in the comments. I absolutely love the simplicity of this setup and the fact that I only used 3 species of plants, yet it still looks like a miniature jungle. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching. This here is a 2-gallon glass jar, and I'm going to use it to create an ecosystem for cherry shrimp. This here is a 2-gallon glass jar, and I'm going to use it to create an ecosystem for cherry shrimp. I'm not going to use any fancy equipment whatsoever, such as CO2, a heater, or even a filter. This would be a super low-tech build that's perfect if you're on a budget or a beginner. Now let's waste no time and start creating this ecosystem. The first thing that I need to do is to address the hole in the glass. Originally, this jar was designed to dispense water, and it had a small tap here which would allow you to do that. Obviously, it's going to need to be patched up. I've cut this disc from a plastic bottle, and it's slightly larger than the diameter of the hole. This here is some aquarium silicone, and I'm going to apply it on the inside edge. Now I can take the plastic disc and press it in place on the inside. To finish it off, I'll add another ring of silicone all around the disc, and then even more on the front side. It's the next day and all the silicone is fully dried. I know it doesn't look the best, but it will be at the back of the scape and you won't even be able to see it. Now let's start building the shrimp ecosystem, and the first step is to create a base layer of nutrients. What I'm going to use for this is simply some garden topsoil. This stuff is extremely rich in nutrients, and it will be the key to healthy plant growth inside the jar. I've used this method in many builds before, and it's always worked really well. You really don't need a thick layer, and just a centimetre or 2 will work great.
Bởi T Plus đâu, qua tới ao ao, Vivo cơ hội, tham gia ngay.
As the topsoil is so high in nutrients, it can't be left open like this, so I'm going to cap it off with some gravel. If I did leave it open, the nutrients would leach out into the water and cause some serious algae problems. This coarse gravel should work nicely. It's completely unnecessary, but I had this small amount of coarse sand left over from a different project, so I'm just going to use it up in here. This layer doesn't have to look the best right now, as I'll add some decorative gravel later. Now let's get to work on the hardscape. To keep with the simplistic theme of this terrarium, I want to try and keep the hardscape as straightforward as possible. The main feature is this piece of wood that sits nicely in the center. This lava rock will not only add some more detail, but it's going to help prop up the wood. This is about as simple as hardscapes get, but despite that fact, I really like how it looks. Left as it is, the wood is almost definitely going to float up to the surface as soon as I fill the jar up with water. To stop this from happening, I'm going to attach the wood to the rock to hold it down. I'm wedging some tissue in the contact points and then soaking it with some liquid type superglue. This method is easy, strong, and best of all, it's shrimp safe. Before planting, I'm giving everything a really good spray down, which will help keep the plants hydrated. The first plant that I'm going to add is this crypt. I've carefully split it into 2 sections, and I think this plant will look best in the mid-ground on either side of the scape. As these plants are quite large, forcing them into the gravel can be quite difficult and potentially damaging. Instead, I find it much easier to dig a hole with the tweezers or my finger and then simply plant the crypt inside. This is another species of crypt that has slightly darker leaves. I think it will look great towards the centre of the scape, just under the wood. Moving on to the background, I want a plant that's going to grow nice and tall and have some vibrant coloration to it. This is some Rotala that I trimmed out from one of my aquariums. Oftentimes you'll hear that this species requires CO2 in order for it to grow successfully, but I've found that's simply not the case. It will grow faster and more vibrant with the addition of CO2, but that doesn't mean it won't thrive in a low-tech setup like this one. Now the background's planted, I want to add a few more plants for details. I'm going to wedge this Anubias into this gap that's in the wood. This plant is an epiphyte, so it doesn't need to be planted into the substrate, and it will simply pull its nutrients from the water column. Now there's not many more places where I can wedge in these epiphytic plants, so I'm going to take a different approach and attach them to some rocks instead. To attach the plants to the rocks, I'm using some gel type superglue. It doesn't hurt the plants so long as you don't absolutely cover their roots, and as I mentioned earlier, it is shrimp safe. Now these can easily be placed anywhere throughout the scape. I think that'll do with the planting. It does look like there's a whole load of empty space, but once the plants grow in, they'll fill out the space nicely. As I briefly mentioned at the start, I want to add some decorative gravel in the foreground. I love the variety in shape and texture of this gravel, and I think it's going to add a really nice natural look to this aquarium. I don't know about you, but I think it looks so much better with this layer of gravel on top. Now it's time to fill the jar up with water. The purpose of the bubble wrap is to help disperse the water and stop it from uprooting plants or disrupting the scape. In addition to the bubble wrap, it's important to fill the jar up slowly to minimize any damage. It may not look the best right now, but I'm sure once the plants grow in and establish, this ecosystem is going to completely transform. Two months have passed, and as I'm sure you can see, this jar aquarium has changed a whole lot. I'll talk about the amazing plant growth shortly, but for now I want to address the obvious change, which is the watercolour. The tea-like discoloration is due to the wood leaching tannins into the water. The species of wood I used is known for doing this, and although I didn't really like how it looked at the start, it's really been growing on me. To me, it adds to the natural look and truly makes you feel like you're looking into a slice of nature. As for the plants, they kind of speak for themselves. The stems of Rotala have almost made their way all the way to the surface, and they're getting more and more vibrant as they do so. The crypts have also been doing great, and all of them have a bunch of new growth. Before adding the shrimp and fast forward into day 100, I want to talk a little bit about the maintenance. There was a slight algae problem in the first couple weeks, but with the help of water changes, it seemed to sort itself out. As of the past month, I've been doing a water change every week or so, but I plan to taper this back to once every 2 to 3 weeks. Now that this ecosystem is starting to establish, doing large, unnecessary water changes is just going to cause unbalance. As for lighting, this aquarium has been sitting on a rack under an LED light where it receives 12 hours of light a day. This schedule seems to be working really well, so I'm not going to change anything whatsoever. This shrimp jar ecosystem has now passed 100 days old, and it really couldn't be doing better. The addition of these beautiful, vibrant cherry shrimp have really brought the scape to life. It's so relaxing to sit back and watch these tiny creatures go about their day. All in all, I'm extremely happy with how this shrimp jar ecosystem's turned out, and I think it just goes to show that you don't need to spend a whole load of money on fancy equipment to create a thriving ecosystem inside your home. If you enjoyed this video or found it useful, you might be interested in watching this one next. In this video, I'll show you how to make a no-filter underwater ecosystem for some stunning cherry shrimp. I'll take you through the entire build process and even show you how it looks after 130 days of growth. This here is a 20cm cube aquarium. They're quite cheap to get hold of and make a great home for small shrimp. The first thing that I'm going to do is get a background installed on the back panel of glass. After cleaning the glass, I'm giving it a light spray and then placing on the background. I'm using window film, but if you're on a budget excess, the background is done, so let's move on to the lighting. I'm going to place on this small LED light. This tank will be sitting on a rack under an LED strip light, so this light is just for the purpose of the build, although it would work great for this size tank. With the boring steps complete, let's start creating this shrimp ecosystem. The first layer to go in is the nutrient layer. This is some regular garden compost and it's absolutely packed with nutrients. You don't need too much, especially in a small tank like this one, and just a fine coating will work perfectly. Next, I'm giving it a good spray down with water and then capping it off with some sand. It's really important to cover up the nutrient layer because if you don't, the nutrients will leach out into the water column and cause some serious algae issues. I've gradually sloped up the sand towards the back of the aquarium, which will help create some depth. The other day, I was in my local fish shop and I saw this piece of spiderwood and couldn't help but buy it. This is one of those rare occasions where the hardscape is pretty much complete right away. I absolutely love how it sits in the tank and it really does fit perfectly. One thing that I do need to add is a few of these black lava rocks. Although these will add some detail, their main function is to keep the wood down and to stop it from floating up once the tank's filled up with water. I've managed to wedge this one right in the spiderwood and then I'll add a few more in the front. As with any hardscape, it's all about personal preference. The main thing is that you come up with something that you like and that you think looks good. At the end of the day, it's your tank, so that's all that really matters. I think that'll do it for this hardscape, and I'm very happy with how it's looking. Now it's about time to start getting some plants inside. As this is a low-tech setup, I like to stick with the plants that I know are going to grow well, as that's going to overall benefit the ecosystem. I made this no-filter shrimp bowl a good few months ago and it really has been thriving. To save on some money, I'm going to take some cuttings from here that I can use inside my new setup. As you can see, it can certainly use a slight trim back. The plant that I'm after is this pearlweed that's growing in the background. I love its small, delicate leaves and I think it will fit the scale of the Nanocube perfectly. Before planting, I'm going to spray the tank with water to get the sand fully saturated. I find it easier to plant in sand that's nice and damp instead of it being dry. Doing it like this will also stop the plants from drying out so fast. I'm clumping a good number of stems together and then pushing them right down into the sand. Don't be afraid to plant them deep, as this will stop them from coming out too easily and get them closer to the nutrients at the base. With some time, these stems should grow nice and tall to fill out the background. Now let's move on to the foreground, as it's looking really quite empty. I want this area to be fully carpeted, and I think there's no better choice than some hairgrass. I've removed them from their pots and given them a good wash. Now I'm tearing them into lots of smaller chunks, ready to be planted. I was planning on planting both pots, but this here is just one pot's worth, which I think will be enough for this small tank. If you wanted to, you can split them down even further, and one pot will carpet a much larger area than you might think. In this case, the tank is really quite small, so I'm planting them nice and dense. To bring a bit more detail and interest to the carpet, I'm going to plant in some Glossostigma. The variation in leaf shape and texture will help the carpet look more wild and natural. In a low-tech, no-filter setup like this one, you do want to be planting as dense as you can. This is because the plants are what keep the water clean. The more you have at the start, the better chances you've got of avoiding algae and having a healthier tank in general. Aquatic plants are prone to drying out, so a light spray down every now and then really is essential. Next, I'm going to plant in some Crypt Parva. This is a very small species of crypt that I think will fit the scale of this tank nicely. Next, I want to plant in some epiphytes. I've got this clump of Bucephalandra as well as some Anubias, of course. These can easily be planted in by simply wedging them in gaps and cracks throughout the scape. It's really important not to plant them into the substrate, as this will cause them to rot and die. The other plants will get their nutrients from the compost at the base, but these will pull their nutrients from the water column. That's the planting complete, and I don't know about you, but I think it's looking great. Now it's time to get the tank filled up with water. This paper towel will help disperse the water and stop it from disrupting the sand or uprooting the plants. With that being said, you've still got to be cautious and fill it up very slowly. I think this Nanocube is looking amazing right now, and I think it'll only look better and better as it grows in. But unfortunately, things don't always go to plan. Here we are 1 month later, and the tank is not really looking how I hoped it would. There is new growth from a lot of the plants, but with that said, there's a lot of algae as well as some plants that simply haven't made it. Although the Anubias is covered in algae, it is doing well, but it's a shame the same can't be said about the Bucephalandra. The majority has melted away, and I'm not sure it's going to be able to bounce back. Despite this tank looking like a toxic wasteland, this is normal and expected in a new setup. If you look carefully on, it has melted away and I'm not sure it's going to be able to bounce back. Despite this tank looking like a toxic wasteland, this is normal and expected in a new setup. If you look carefully on the glass, you can see that the tank is filled with detritus worms. These worms are completely normal and healthy, but their numbers inside this tank are a bit excessive. The reason for their high population is a mix of decaying organic matter as well as this just being a new tank that's trying to find its balance. One thing this tank is certainly in need of is a bit of maintenance. To start off, I'm going to try and remove as much algae as I can from the glass as well as the wood and even the plants. I've found that the most useful tool for this is a toothbrush. Next, I'm going to trim back some of the Glossostigma in the foreground as it's starting to grow a bit tall and leggy. After cutting them back, I'm replanting each and every stem back down into the foreground. By doing this, you'll achieve a denser, more filled in look in a quicker time frame. The other plant that needs a bit of a trim is the pearlweed. It's almost reaching the top of the water, so I'm going to give them a trim and then replant the stems. To finish off the maintenance, I'm going to do a quick water change. I'm draining roughly 30% and then I'm going to fill it up with some fresh clean water. At the moment, I'm doing a water change every 3 or 4 days, but with time I'll stretch that out to once a month or so. As soon as this tank finds its balance, it will be time to add the shrimp, so let's leave it for another few weeks.
Quan trọng là vui. Thích hè lắm. Ghét hè nhiều.
It's been a good few weeks later, and as you can see, the tank has really started to find its balance. The algae is almost completely gone and the plants are looking a lot more green and vibrant. There is still a bit of algae on the wood, but I'm confident that'll clean up once I add the inhabitants. The pearlweed in the back is doing really well and it's created the dense green background that I was hoping for. As for the carpet, it's filling in nicely, but there is still a few patches here and there. Now I think this nano ecosystem is certainly at the stage where I can add some life. I'm going to add a small group of these red cherry shrimp. I think their deep red coloration will pop out nicely on the vibrant green plants. My goal is to get them breeding to produce a successful colony, but for now let's get these guys acclimated. I'm temperature acclimating them whilst at the same time using a pipette to introduce some of the tank's water into their water. I'll repeat this process every 5 minutes or so over the course of half an hour to get them nice and adjusted to the conditions. As there's only a small number of them, I'm not going to have to feed them whatsoever. This is because there's enough natural food such as algae and biofilm that they can enjoy. Since the last update, I've moved house and created my very own ecosystem room. I think this cube aquarium fits perfectly on the nano rack, and luckily it was pretty straightforward to move over and there was no problems whatsoever. After filling the tank up, I took a close look inside and I've spotted something really quite exciting. There's not one, but 2 shrimp carrying tons of tiny eggs. This is so exciting to see, as it truly means they're thriving inside this ecosystem. All I've got to do now is sit back and wait for them to hatch. This nano ecosystem is now over 4 months old and it's looking better than ever. There's not a spot of algae in sight, and as for the health of the plants, I think they truly speak for themselves. I must admit the foreground is a bit overgrown, so I'm going to cut back and pull out a few plants so we can get a better look inside. With a handful of plants pulled out, I think that's looking much better. Now let's answer the question that I'm sure you're wondering. Have the baby shrimp hatched? Well, a week or so ago, I was looking inside the tank and I spotted some microscopic baby shrimp. They were really hard to see at first, but once I found one, I kept seeing more and more. It's so relaxing and rewarding to sit back and watch these tiny creatures go about their day. As there's no predators inside this tank, the survival rate of these shrimp is going to be incredibly high. As I've got plenty of other tanks, I can always move some over, but if you're trying this yourself, it is something to keep in mind. I'm extremely happy with how this ecosystem's turned out, and it really has been a joy to follow its journey over the past 130 days. I really hope you found this video useful and maybe even decide to try making something like this yourself. If you enjoyed this video, why not check out this one next, where I show you how to make a shallow pond aquarium fully from scratch. In this video, I'll show you how to make a no-filter mini indoor pond for some tiny cherry shrimp. Be sure to stick around to the end as something truly amazing happens 90 days in. Here's the tank that I'll be using. I built it myself from an old aquarium. I'll put a link to a similar sized tank in the description. It's already got a foam mat on the bottom, so let's get straight into the idea that I've got for this setup. I want to have a nice tall structure on the left side with lots of immersed plants growing around it. This will leave a really good water volume for the shrimp, which I think they'll appreciate. To build the hardscape, I've got a selection of driftwood and cereal stones. I think the contrast between these two has the potential of creating a really nice natural looking scape. As always, I leave a good amount of time to experiment with multiple different layouts and structures until I find something I'm happy with. In this case, it didn't take too long, and I really like how these two pieces come together to look like the base of a tree. To make things a whole lot easier, I'm going to lock these two pieces together. This is super easy to do by wedging some tissue between the contact points and then soaking it in some liquid type superglue. It dries really quickly and forms a strong bond that is completely safe for the shrimp. I always like to add a couple more contact points just to make sure that they don't come apart in the future. Now this piece is really solid, I can place it in the tank and move on with the hardscape. I'm not pushing it all the way towards the back as I do want some substrate and plants to go behind it. Now I can take the stones and start placing them inside. Same as the wood, it's a case of trial and error and finding out which stones fit and look good together. I need to try and arrange them to create a retaining wall which will stop the substrate that will sit behind the driftwood from rolling down into the water. Here's what I've come up with so far. I'm really liking how it's looking, but it's getting hard to build anymore as I keep on knocking everything over. Same as I did with the wood, I'm going to lock everything down in place with the super glue and tissue method. This will not only make building the scape much easier, but it'll also mean when doing maintenance in the future, I haven't got to worry about completely destroying the hardscape. Here's the hardscape all locked together, and it's even strong enough to be taken out as one entire piece. I think it looks great inside the tank, and there's still plenty of room in behind the driftwood for the immersed plants. Now I'm going to take some fine filter floss and plug the holes throughout the retaining wall. It is important to do this because if you don't, the substrate will leak through these holes onto the sand and it certainly won't look too good. You might be thinking that the white filter wall is a bit of an eyesore, but you won't be able to see it by the end as it's super easy to hide with moss and plants. With all the holes plugged in, I can now move on and start making the pond look much more natural. I'm starting with a layer of fine sand. A paintbrush comes in handy to spread the sand out throughout the scape. I think this small piece of cereal stone looks good as an island in the middle of the sand. To make the transition from the sand up to the hardscape look more natural, I'm going to add some of these small stones. I'm not overthinking their placement too much, but as a good rule of thumb, there should be more around the base of the rocks, with there being less and less as it goes out into the open sand. To tie everything together, I've got some fine gravel which I'll sprinkle on top. In my opinion, I think the combination of these materials really makes the scape look a lot more natural. To improve the detail and interest even more, I'm going to add some small spiderwood branches. I'm going to place these at the base of the driftwood to look like roots growing down over the rocks. Once I'm happy with their placement, I'll use some gel-type superglue to lock them down. I should mention I'll list all the materials I've used for this build in the description below, along with some links in case you want to try making something like this yourself. I'm extremely happy with how the hardscapes turned out, and I love the detail that the small twigs bring. What I'm going to do now is fill in the space behind the hardscape with substrate. Aqua soil is going to be perfect for this as it holds a good amount of nutrients and it's not going to stagnate from sitting in still water. Before adding any plants, I'm giving the entire scape a good spray down. To kick off the planting, I've got some Anubias and Bucephalandra. I'm preparing them by taking them out the pots and removing all the rock wool before planting. You can plant them as they are, but I like to split them up into a few different sections. As these plants are epiphytes, all I'm going to do to plant them is wedge them in gaps and cracks throughout the scape. They grow great both under and above the water, so I'm planting them accordingly. I think some Anubias growing on this small rock will be a nice addition. As there's no gaps to wedge it into, I'm using a small amount of gel-type superglue to mount it to the rock. Even with just a few plants in, I'm loving how this mini pond has sprung to life and is starting to take shape. These plants really don't like drying out, so it's important to give them a light spray down every now and then. Next up, I've got a plant which I think will help take this scape to the next level. These are asparagus ferns, and my favourite thing about them is that they resemble small miniature trees. I'm using some long tweezers to dig a hole down into the aqua soil and then planting them inside. I'm really hoping that they thrive in this setup. Next, I want to plant some hydrocotyle to grow right at the water's edge. I'm hoping this will fill out some space and have some nice dense growth. As this is a no filter setup, I'll be relying on the plants to clean the water and act as the filter. This here is some Alternanthera mini. Under good lighting, it has some really nice vibrant red leaves. It is an aquatic plant, but I have grown it great inside terrariums. I'm not sure how it's going to do in this setup, as I'm going to try and grow it in the open air. It might die off due to lack of humidity, but I'd say it's worth a try. Now the planting's complete, I'm absolutely loving how this mini indoor pond is looking. I think it's about time I fill it up with water. I've placed in some bubble wrap to help disperse the water and stop it from disrupting the scape. All I'm using for this setup is some dechlorinated tap water. This certainly wouldn't be a mini pond without some floating plants. I'm placing in a few different species to add some nice detail and contrast to the surface of the water. Their fast growth will also help balance the pond's mini ecosystem. Just over 4 weeks have passed and the mini pond is thriving. For the most part, all the plants are growing in really well and I've had no problems with algae whatsoever. The only change I've made is replacing the Alternanthera with some Fittonia as it started to struggle due to lack of humidity. A couple weeks ago I did introduce some small snails into the water, but I think it's about time that I add even more life. I'm introducing a small group of red cherry shrimp which will call this pond their home. If conditions are perfect, they'll end up breeding, which will be great to see. It's only been 3 weeks since I introduced the shrimp and something amazing has happened. There's not one, but 2 females carrying loads of tiny eggs. Fingers crossed they stay healthy and develop into loads of baby shrimp. The mini pond is doing great, as are the shrimp. The females are still carrying the eggs just as they should be. The small black dots on the eggs are actually the eyes of the baby shrimp. This really is great to see, and hopefully they'll be hatching in no time at all. Here we are 3 months later after setting up this mini pond ecosystem. It's been an absolute joy to watch it grow and evolve over the past 90 days. Before taking a look inside the water, let's talk about some of the plants. The floating plants have got to be one of the highlights for me. I think the variety and species really adds to the natural look of the tank. The hydrocotyle is doing exceptionally well and it's even sent some runners over the glass on the outside of the pond. I love how they look, so I certainly won't be cutting them back. The Photonia did die off slightly as it acclimated, but it seems to have bounced back strong with these vibrant pink leaves. One change you've probably noticed is in the asparagus fern behind the driftwood. The original fern unfortunately started to die off, so I switched it with this. This could have been for a number of reasons, but my best guess is that it struggled to acclimate to the humidity as I pulled it out a very humid setup. Now let's take a look into the water as there's some really exciting things going on inside. At first glance you can't really see much other than the adult shrimp, but as you look a bit closer a whole nother world opens up. The eggs the female were carrying have finally hatched and here are the babies. They're no more than 12 hours old and only a couple millimeters in size. In this shot here you can really get an idea of just how tiny they are. On the left is one of the adults and it looks like an absolute giant in comparison. As I look around the tank I can see more and more of them. They seem to especially like hiding out in the roots of the floating plants. It goes without saying that this setup isn't going to be big enough for all these shrimp as they start to grow up. Luckily for them, I've got a giant ecosystem in need of some shrimp. This is a future build coming out on the channel, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. Thank you for making it all the way to the end. I'd love to hear what you think of this build in the comments below. In this video, I'll show you how to make a no-filter bowl aquarium for cherry shrimp, and I'll even show you how it looks after 50 days of growth. Let's waste no time and get straight into the build. I'm going to use this 8-litre glass bowl, and the first step is to create a base layer of nutrients at the bottom. This here is some regular garden compost and it's going to work great for this. I've used this stuff in a few underwater ecosystems before and the plants absolutely love it. You really don't need to add too much as it's very high in nutrients and a thin layer will work perfectly. This method is a much cheaper alternative to using something like Aquasoil, and to be honest, I actually think it works better. Before capping it off with gravel, I'm going to spray it with water to ensure that there's no air bubbles trapped at the bottom. This is a mix of fine gravel and I'm going to use it to cap off the nutrient layer. There's a variety in size, texture and colour, and I think they look quite natural. Capping off the compost will keep the nutrients from getting into the water column. It's really important that I do this because if I left the compost open it would leach nutrients into the water and lead to some serious algae problems. I've poured in about 1 inch, which will work well, but I am going to add a bit more to the back to build up some more height. Now it's time to start creating the hardscape, and for that I've got some georock and spiderwood. The rock has got some really nice detail to it, and I think that in combination with the dark contrast of the spiderwood will look really good. I've got a good selection of pieces, so I'm trying out multiple different layouts until I find something that I'm happy with. After a bit of trial and error, I've settled on this rock placement. It's certainly nothing crazy, but I think it serves as a good foundation for the spiderwood. I'm trying to keep this hardscape relatively simple and doing my best to leave as much ground space as I can for the plants. This is even more important in a setup like this one as it's not going to have a filter, so I'll be solely relying on the plants to keep the water clean and healthy. I like how this spiderwood looks, so I'm going to lock it in place with some gel type superglue. If I don't do this, it will float up to the surface as soon as I fill the bowl up with water. Despite the hardscape being relatively simple, I do really like how it looks and it is budget friendly. Before I can start planting, I'm going to give the gravel a really good spray down to get it nice and saturated. To start off the planting, I've got this pearlweed that I'm going to plant in the background of the scape. I'll be honest, I bought this online and it's really not looking too healthy, so fingers crossed it bounces back. I guess that's the downside to buying plants online, as you can't pick out the healthiest looking ones like you can in a shop. This plant should grow nice and tall and create a lush green background to fill out all this space. I want some more plants growing in just behind the georock, so that's what I'm going to add next. This plant's leaves will be bigger and wider than the pearlweed, but it's not going to grow as tall. As with most aquariums, the denser you plant right at the start, the less chance you'll have of running into algae problems. This is a crypt and I'm going to plant it in the gap between the two pieces of spiderwood. I want this to be the centerpiece plant, as it's going to grow much bigger than the rest. I'm using some long tweezers to dig a hole into the gravel and then going ahead and planting the roots inside. For the foreground, I'm going to plant in a mix of these two plants. They're both low growing and will slowly spread and carpet the foreground, which is exactly what I'm looking for. I've taken them out the pots, washed off the nutrient-rich gel and split them up into smaller sections ready to plant. I think having a mix of carpeting plants instead of just one species is really going to make the foreground of this aquarium look more wild and natural. I'm liking how it's looking so far, but there's still a few more plants to go in that will add some nice detail. After giving the bowl a light spray down to keep the plants from drying out, I'm going to plant in a couple different species of Bucephalandra. To plant them, I'm simply wedging them in the gaps between the rock and spiderwood. These are slow growing plants that will pull nutrients from the water column to grow. That's the planting complete, and although the bowl does look relatively empty, I'm confident that the plants are going to grow in nicely and fill out the space. Now it's time to get the bowl filled up with water. A small piece of paper towel helps disperse the water and stops it from disrupting the sand too much. As for the water that I'm using, it's just regular tap water that I've dechlorinated. With the bowl filled up, I'm really liking how it looks, but one thing's for sure, it's only going to get better and better as the plants grow in and establish. It's only a month later, and yet this underwater ecosystem has completely transformed. It's quite unbelievable just how well the plants have grown in over the past 30 days without CO2 or even a filter. When looking at the roots, it's clear to see that the nutrient layer at the bottom of the bowl is definitely doing its job. The roots of the plants have quickly made their way through the gravel down into the compost, and the result is this lush green plant growth. Now I'm going to do a quick bit of maintenance before introducing some life. I'm going to trim a couple of the plants back and then give the inside of the bowl a good clean. There's been no problems with algae so far, other than a small amount building up on the glass every couple weeks, which is to be expected. The bowl has only had 2 water changes so far, but I have stirred the water up quite a lot, so I am going to do another one. In a small, no-filter ecosystem like this one, I think it's beneficial to do small water changes rather than big ones. This helps keep parameters consistent and algae blooms at bay. Now let's introduce the first bit of life that will call this bowl aquarium home. Here I've got 6 tiny aquatic snails. They'll help keep the aquarium clean by eating algae. A lot of people worry about these kinds of snails overpopulating the water, but that's never been a problem for me. If you've got a ton of algae and decaying plants, then you might run into problems, but if not, I wouldn't worry. Now it's about time to introduce the creatures that this underwater ecosystem was made for. I've got 5 of these beautiful cherry shrimp, and I think they're the perfect inhabitants for this small bowl aquarium. After about 45 minutes acclimating, I'm going to release them inside and then let them settle in for a couple weeks. This no-filter bowl ecosystem is now over 50 days old, and things really couldn't be better. The plants in the foreground are slowly carpeting the space just as I hoped they would, and the pearlweed in the background is actually doing really well, which is a surprise considering how it looked when I planted it. It's still got a bit of growing to do, but it definitely bounced back strong. As for the cherry shrimp, they've been thriving, and it's great to see their vibrant red colours pop out amongst the green plants. They haven't started breeding yet, but I'm confident in the coming weeks we're going to have some tiny baby cherry shrimp exploring the bowl. The snails have been working hard to keep the glass free of algae, and to my surprise they do move really quite fast. This bowl aquarium was an absolute joy to make, and it's been super easy to care for, which is always a positive. I would love to hear your thoughts on this build in the comments below, and as always, thank you for watching. In this video, I'll show you how I made this flowing riverbank paludarium. Be sure to stick around to the end, as I'm even going to add some tiny adorable creatures that will call this ecosystem their home. Now let's get straight into the build. Here's the tank that I'll be using. I made it myself from an old aquarium, but I'll put a link in the description for something similar. I really like the dimensions, and I think I've got the perfect scape in mind for it. What I've got in mind is creating a slice of a riverbank with lots of round pebbles, moss and plants. I've went out and collected all these pebbles myself, and I've soaked them in some boiling water to ensure that I'm not introducing any pests. I deliberately picked out a variety in sizes which are all similar in colour, which will hopefully come together to create a natural looking scape. I'm placing in some foam to protect the glass and more evenly distribute the weight of the stones. Now I'm going to start experimenting with multiple different hardscape layouts until I find something that I'm happy with. It took some time and a good few tries, but the hardscape layout is starting to come together. As I mentioned earlier, I'm trying to recreate the bank of a river, so I want the stones to slowly taper up as they go towards the back. At the moment they're only balancing, so I'm going to lock them together with the super glue and tissue method. By locking the rocks together, it makes creating and maintaining the paludarium much easier, as you haven't got to worry about them falling over. All I'm doing is wedging some tissue between the contact points and then soaking it in super glue. It dries in no time and forms a strong bond which is 100% safe.